What's happening, everybody? It is Trey here. I'm joined today by my dad, Sean, and today, Reactions to the Classics, we are looking at Bob Dylan's mid-70s record, Desire. This is coming to us as a suggestion from one of our biggest Patreon supporters, Sean Purdy. Sean, thank you so much for the support and for suggesting this record. It was a doozy.
Yeah, it was great. Great name as well, Sean.
So. Yeah, exactly. So if you enjoyed this record, be sure to give Sean some love in the comments below. We've done a few of Dylan's 60s records, and so it was nice to kind of jump ahead a decade and see what he had to offer here. If this is your first time joining us at Reactions to the Classics, we appreciate it. We take a look at some of the most classic albums of all time and do a detailed track-by-track review. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button, and we would love to link up with you in our Facebook group as well as on Patreon. You too could have us review any album you want. We appreciate that, and all that to say, let's just dive into this record.
Well, you mentioned his mid-70s. January 1976 this came out. It's Dylan's 17th album by this point. It went to #1 in the US, #3 in the UK. NME named it their album of the year, and it's 174 on the Rolling Stones top 500 albums of all time. It's one of Dylan's most collaborative efforts, featuring the same caravan of musicians as the acclaimed Rolling Thunder Revue tours the previous year, and he added violinist Scarlett Rivera. Most of it's composed of lengthy story songs. This one's a little different because he co-wrote all but 2 of the songs with Jacques Levy. He went to Levy's loft and played Isis, one of the tracks on here, and after that, they started writing all the songs together. So I found that to be very interesting and unlike the Dylan that we knew.
Absolutely, and Levy noted that he was a big fan of the partnership. There's 2 tracks on here that Bob just wrote by himself. They ended up isolating themselves in the Hamptons to work on their songs. They came up with about 14 over 3 weeks. Dylan also had a bunch of studio musicians in here, including Eric Clapton. Clapton unfortunately got the boot because Dylan just noted how chaotic it was in the studio.
Yes.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, so he kind of thinned that out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to bring us to our first track, which is absolutely unbelievable. Hurricane. It's 8 minutes, 33 seconds long. It's 11 verses. It's Dylan at his very top level. The story of Rubin Hurricane Carter was a boxer, 9-ranked guy in the world, not #1 like Bob mentions in the song, but Rubin was accused, him and another guy, of murdering some people in Paterson, New Jersey at a bar and grill. He was arrested. He's put in prison. There's a bunch of racism that went on there. Denzel Washington actually made a movie about it. Dylan went and visited Rubin after reading his autobiography, and then he went and visited some of Rubin's supporters, and after that he started writing this song. A lot of people didn't like the song because he took a few dramatic liberties with it, but Rubin eventually got out in 1985 and was pardoned because of the racism and the stuff that went on in his case.
Yeah, and a lot of people point to this track as one of the starting points for really getting a lot of support behind Rubin. During the 1975 tour, they actually did a benefit show at MSG, raised over $100,000 for Rubin and his efforts. This just has a propelling nature. I noticed that in a lot of the songs on this record, just the storytelling and the imagery that Bob sets forth is just fantastic. The abstract ideas aren't as prevalent on this record.
Yeah, I agree.
As we've heard on some of his previous work, but the more just nitty-gritty start-to-finish stories is something that I appreciated, and that this song has a lot of it. Notes in the first verse, Patty Valentine, a real person, comes down, she sees the bartender shot. As it goes on, he notes that there's these 2 criminals that went to rob that same night, and they admitted falsely that they saw Rubin escaping with the gun, and the cops pressured these criminals saying, "Don't forget you're white. Didn't you see old Rubin coming out with the gun, this and that?" Dylan just notes, as you mentioned, the racism and just everything going around in that mid-60s period.
Yeah, and he actually had to redo part of the song because you talked about him naming names. The record company got uncomfortable with it, so he had to redo it. But I'm going to tell you what, in the final version, he still names a lot of names, so I'm surprised, but he laid it out there. I have a lot of respect for it. My favorite track on here, one of my favorite tracks I've heard of his.
I'm going to have to back that up. Some of my favorite lines in here: "If you're black, you might as well not show up on the street unless you want to draw the heat." And to see him obviously framed couldn't help but make me feel ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game. Just that violin
The violin is tremendous, man.
Just awesome, and it had a fast-paced, manic nature to it, which set the backing to the lyrics quite nicely.
Well, that's going to take us to Isis, and characterized by Dylan as a song about marriage. Once again, all verses, no chorus. The melody's in the style of what they call a modal folk song, written and recorded during the time of separation, reunion, Dylan's own marriage. One of the more fantasy songs on here. You mentioned there's not a lot of abstract on here, but this is a little abstract.
Yeah, this is really a love story when you boil it down, because he's moving on from his love, Isis. He mentions that their anniversary was May the 5th, and now it looks like that love is done, so he's going out on the town. Another guy sees that he's a little down on the dumps, I guess you would say, and he asks, hey, you want something easy to catch? Thinking that he's going to get treasure and whatnot. They go on their big adventure. The main character finds out that this guy's just a common grave robber. During all this adventure, he still has Isis on his mind, though. As they're on their journey, unfortunately, his companion ends up dying. The main character just has to keep on trucking, though. He goes to the tomb, and there's nothing in it. So he puts his companion in there, says a prayer for him, and through all this, it wasn't about, I don't think, the end destination for him. It was the journey, because he realized, I got to go back to Isis. He goes back to her. They they exchange a couple words, a little spat here and there, but at the end of the day, they renew their love for each other. So I thought it was a wonderful story, and a good back in from Hurricane. We got that really intense kind of protest, justice type song, and then we got this more love type of song.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The song itself is it's okay for me. I mean, it's decent. I thought the songwriting on it is tremendous, as you're always going to expect out of Bob. Next up is Mozambique. It was released as a single, went to number 54. Mozambique had just come out of a kind of a war with Portugal to get their own independence. So some of the supporters of Mozambique thought Dylan, I mean, you already mentioned his political leanings, was coming out in support of him, but when you read the lyrics to the song, it's really just the setting for this romantic getaway.
Yeah, the imagery, again, I gotta highlight that. He notes in one of the first lines that the sunny sky is aqua blue, and it's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's because this Mozambique area is just almost like a paradise in a certain sense, and I thought the bass line was, again, fantastic. This was one of the more unique vocal deliveries from Dylan, just the way he emphasized different types of words. Not one that stands out on the rest of the record for me personally, but still a solid tune.
Yeah, I mean, it sticks in my head. I like it's got a great little vibe to it, and actually legend has it that really the song came about because Levy and Dylan kind of challenged each other to see how many words they could get to rhyme with Mozambique or the eek part of it. So I found that to be interesting, but just a nice little getaway in the middle of this thing.
And next up is One More Cup of Coffee. He actually has female vocals here with Emmylou Harris. She's on a few tracks and adds her sweet voice and sound to these, backing of the great lyrics. And here, the character in the song, it really loves this other character, but the love's not reciprocated.
Right.
He uses some very descriptive imagery, saying her eyes are like two jewels. And at the end of the day, the guy mentions that he's going to have to go down to the valley below. Musically and backing, I can see myself listening to this song as I'm like on Camelback under the moon and stars type of deal on here. If I had to peg it down, this would probably be my least favorite track. If this is my least favorite, you can see how quality the record is.
Yeah, it's my second least favorite. This and the final song, SARA, are the only two that Dylan wrote on his own. Yeah, for me, this one is it's okay. I mean, I respect it for what it is. It's as good songwriting as always. That's going to take us to the next track, Oh Sister, a Bill duet with Emmylou Harris, where it's the only time Dylan so far has brought God into the equation to woo a woman. And the interesting thing on this one, Emmylou's vocal on the final mix was actually overdubbed a day later, one of the few overdubs made during the Desire sessions, as they were all almost done on the spot.
Again, a more stripped back type of song, which I think suited the vocal performance on this and the lyrical content. Good track, and then that ends the A-side before we go into the long 11-minute epic Joey about gangster Joey Gallo. Again, we have Dylan writing a song about a real life person here, but as opposed to what a lot of people thought of Joey Gallo as a gangster and criminal, Dylan paints a picture of a guy that's a bit misunderstood and a bit more gray.
Yeah, in 1975, I actually said I viewed him more as hero than criminal. This is 12 verses, and it is just absolutely an epic story. Dylan's Gallo refused to kill innocent people, made peace with black men, and shielded his family when he was about to be shot as they were eating in a restaurant. A lot of people had issue with this because everything that was noted about Gallo, I mean, he went to prison and everything, was that he was not this guy. And then when he got out of prison, he went
right back into
He went right back. Now, he didn't carry a gun, and he sings about it. He didn't carry a gun because he's around kids a lot. But, yeah, I'm not sure that, I mean, who knows, but I'm not sure that Joey was a reformed guy when he got out. And I don't really know how Bob came to that conclusion that he was, but it is an interesting song. I mean, I like it. It's a story, guys. It's a freaking movie that plays out over 11 minutes, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And then Dylan kind of noted in a later interview in the 2000s that Levy was the guy.
Yeah, he kind of distanced himself. Yeah. I didn't write that. Levy did. I just sang it. So that was an interesting thing as well.
So who knows how collaborative this partnership was on this song in particular, but I do enjoy it because it starts off saying time is like an accordion, then we actually get the accordion in there. He mentions that Joey was on the wrong side of whatever side that there was. He ends up going to prison, and there's one of my favorite lines in the entire record. He asked, "What time is it?" 5 to 10, said Joey. The judge says that's exactly what you get. And then at the end, he's at a clam bar. The hit's out on Joey because he went right back in, as we mentioned, into the criminal ways. Shots were fired, and he pushes the table down to protect his family, but he doesn't get out alive.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's my favorite song on the B side. I mean, just because it's an epic, like I said, it's more like a movie or a storytelling than it is a song almost. That takes us to Romance in Durango, which they're not actually in Durango, Trey. They're trying to get to Durango. It's about an outlaw and his lover. They're in Mexico trying to get there. Because they're in Mexico, it has a Latin feel, so very different sounding for Bob.
Yeah, it did have that Spanish atmosphere to it, the mariachi type of elements. I really enjoyed this one, again, because of the story. It has hopeful lyrics throughout the entire song because they note all the things that they're going to do. They're going to go down, watch the bullfighting, and then just go down to the church, this and that. And then at the end, all the hopes are dashed.
Yeah, it doesn't end well, guys. Spoiler alert.
Because he gets capped.
Gets capped, man.
And he tells his lover Magdalena to look over, see, and take one more shot because we might not make it through the night. Very solid storytelling yet again, and I dug how different this song was than the rest of the record.
Yeah, it's fine for me. I like that it's different. I like that he's pushing himself. If you're on album 17, you've got to vary some things up. That takes us to Black Diamond Bay.
Yeah, and this is, again, I think if you are just listening to this casually, you're not going to like it as much, but if you follow along with the lyrics...
The lyrics on this one are fantastic, man.
It's expertly done because Bob introduces characters to this island. Through each verse, a new character is introduced, but they're all interwoven with each other. So a woman comes in with a Panama hat, which is important for the end of the song. Yeah. She goes into this hotel where a Greek man comes down, asks the desk clerk for a pin and some rope. For obvious reasons, he's going to hang himself, and then going through, there's a soldier, this other tiny man. It's just crazy how Bob is able to interweave.
It is.
And note how all their stories come together. At the end, the woman comes down. There's a do not disturb sign on the Greek man's door, but she still knocks anyway, saying, "Hey, there's danger near," not knowing that this man's actually in danger, about to kill himself. At the end, unfortunately, a volcano starts erupting and all the smoke and fire goes, and the last verse is kind of nice because it shows a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a guy watching it on the news. He's watching Cronkite. He calls out Walter Cronkite, but then he's like, doesn't really care. He gets up to go get another beer because it's like it's a distance away. And I think it's kind of a commentary on, we watch the news or we read these stories of this horrible stuff going on. This place is being destroyed, and he's like, I mean, if it's not close to us, we can't relate to it, and we just kind of become numb to it. So I thought that was a nice, subtle, big-time statement to end the song.
Yeah, and one of the only things that's left is that Panama hat
that's it.
Was introduced at the start. So cyclical in that nature, and just one of the best stories, I think, on this record. And there's a lot of good ones. And we finish out with one of the most personal songs I think Bob has ever done, SARA.
Yeah, it's about his wife at the time. They were not getting along. She was actually at the studio watching it through the glass, as some people have said. He kind of traces back to a different time with their kids, and they're having fun, and all of these different good experiences that they've had, and they actually reconciled after this, but they did end up splitting up a couple years later.
Yeah, I did like the fact that he notes that they're on the beach. The kids are, with their pails.
Painting that picture, man.
Oh, absolutely. And as he continues to go through, you can just, picture, seeing the kids grow up with this person that you love is fantastic. And then at the end, he notes now the beach is empty, and that's kind of gone and done away with as the feelings of reciprocation of love between him and Sarah are fizzling out as well. And he really just puts his heart on his sleeve here and is vulnerable and pleads how much he loves and needs Sarah. He says, "Loving you is the one thing I'll never regret." I had a call back to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, which of course was the ending track on Blonde, written for Sarah as well. So I thought that was a neat little Easter egg, a great way to end off this album.
Yeah, that's going to take us to our favorite tracks. For me, I mentioned at the beginning, but Hurricane is by far the standout for me on this album. That song is tremendous. Of the albums we've listened to so far, it'd probably make my top 10 of Bob's songs, and that's saying something, because it's hard to make the top 10 of Bob's songs off of the catalog we've listened to.
Really enjoyed Sarah as well. Joey Isis was great, as well as Black Diamond Bay, and that'll take us to our overall score.
Yeah, for me, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit ago here. If you weren't reading the lyrics and you just put this thing on and casually listen to it, I'm not sure you would enjoy it. I don't know, you might, but it lends a lot more with the lyrics and understanding the storytelling of the song. So for that reason, I'm going to give it an 8.0. The songs themselves, they just don't really do it for me that much, but the songwriting is on another level. And I mean, it's Dylan. I rate Dylan very high. I love lyrics. I love stories. I love true musicians, and he is, right up there at the top of the list with a couple others. So 8.0 for me.
I actually liked the musical backing a lot more than you did. I think the violin.
The violin was standout.
The violin played a great atmosphere to it. Some of the strong songs were more stripped back, but you still had that great harmonica interplay. I thought the bass lines on here throughout the entire record were punchy and just added the oomph and emphasis where it needed to be. I'm going to be in the 8.5, 8.75 range on this record. I really enjoyed it. Songwriting, as you mentioned, was absolutely fantastic. It's 9 songs, about 56 minutes long. Let us know what you think of Desire below. Sean, thank you for suggesting this record.
Yeah, definitely.
We love Dylan here. So
Sean Purdy, not me, Sean.
Yeah.
That'd be weird to talk to me about a third person. But yeah, thank you very much, Sean.
And again, be sure to give him some love in the comments below. We'll have more Dylan on tap in the future. Might have to go back to Blood on the Tracks just a little bit here. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And until next time, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Happy listening, my friends, and we will see ya.